John Wick 4 is the fourth John Wick flick, in case you didn't get that from the numeral. And just like the other films, I loved it on a purely visceral level. Regardless of any complaints pertaining to plot or storytelling, which we'll get to in a minute, let's set up the fact that I love these movies. All of them. They contain some of the best action filmmaking not only now but in cinematic history, with fight scenes so well shot and choreographed that lesser action films should probably go cry in the corner for their ineptitude. You know what you did. For shame! I've always hated shaky cam and over-editing, especially in action, but now that we have the John Wick blueprint, there is simply no excuse for that garbage. Chad Stahelski, the stuntman turned director of these movies, has raised the bar where fluid brutality is concerned. And if awesome films like Sisu are any indicator, we are hopefully in for an action movie renaissance off the back of this. Shifting over to more of a narrative focus, I think the John Wick universe did a very good job initially of world building without clunky exposition. We know through very scant dialogue that you don't fuck with John Wick, and we learn about the world in which these assassins operate, with their hotels and coins and little hierarchies, through scenes which also further the narrative. The first movie especially is very well balanced, without pretty much any fat on its narrative bones. This relative simplicity sort of becomes muddled though as the films go along, and by the fourth, it feels like the writers just keep coming up with arbitrary rules for their world to the point where it's a bit of a mess. Apparently, you can be excommunicado, hunted by literally everyone, murder the head of the entire organization in the first 5 minutes of the film, but if your family can stitch your ticket back together, you can issue a challenge to the person hunting you for a one-on-one duel, pistols at dawn, but they can still send everyone in the world after your head before the appointed time comes, and a blargity blargity blargity. All of this is probably fine if you're not thinking about it, and just reveling in the gorgeous flowing violence and neon cinematography. But as somebody who appreciated the streamlined rule set of the first film, the fourth just felt clunky. And now, if you're willing to go a level deeper with me, buckle up for some Jamo-style narrative inception, because I think all of this points to a deeper problem: the story itself. What is the story of the 4 John Wick films? I'm genuinely asking because to me, the subsequent movies just serve to stretch out the narrative of the first without a satisfying payoff. Let's examine John's character arc in simple terms. John Wick is a legendary killer. His wife dies and he quits the business. He gets drawn back in when some buttholes kill his pooch, steal his ride, and then he can't get out again. And murder happens. And more murder. So much murder. Rinse and repeat for like 4 movies, during which the wife is pretty much never mentioned again until the last one. And what is John's character arc after all this murderizing? He earns his freedom, again, but also dies in the process and is buried next to his wife, with loving husband written on the tombstone. It's not far from where it began, if you see what I mean. In character terms, it's really the same payoff we could have had at the end of the first film, with no real extra shading or dimension. There's no redemptive element or the catharsis of some overarching retribution, like if he were after the same bad guy for all 4 movies or something. And nothing is really learned by anybody. Now, let me be very clear about something. The John Wick character doesn't need to be overly complex. In fact, it's probably to the benefit of the films that he isn't. This is Keanu after all, and while I adore the guy, he seems like a really genuine and humble person, unlike some other Hollywood stars, but he's not a great dramatic actor. He just isn't. I think John has more confirmed kills than spoken words, and that's cool by me. But I feel like there was a serious missed opportunity in the script for him to be part of a story that was actually compelling. There's a specific moment that I'm thinking of, around the halfway mark of the franchise. We've been introduced to many characters, from John Leguizamo the mechanic, to our pals at the hotel, to Hobo Morpheus and his ragged army, and the battle lines seem to be being drawn between the powers of the High Table and those other factions who helped John Wick. This is where the script, to my mind, could have taken a much more satisfying turn. And it's a turn that felt so simple, elegant, and obvious that I was legitimately confused when it never came to fruition. As I said, the battle lines were being drawn. It felt like the beginning of an epic confrontation between the powers of old, led by the tyrannical fist of the High Table and a new order of renegades, spearheaded by Mr. Wick and the various other figures that support him. It's simple but classical, where new ideals overcome the stale, repressive, or atavistic entities of old. This would have expanded the narrative beyond the focus of John's barely existent character arc. If it felt like he was fighting for something meaningful, the action scenes would have had even more weight. This would have also given the supporting cast roles that felt meaningful, where they work together towards some kind of purpose, whether it's ideological or physical. Something. Instead, Winston betrays John, but then it's sort of okay when he helps him again because he'll get the hotel back, which is more selfish than noble? I don't know. Laurence Fishburne also ends up just warping around the map whenever the script needs somebody to deliver John some new underpants or a gun, so he felt really weirdly utilized. I could go on, but you get the idea. It just doesn't feel like anyone has anything meaningful to do, because there's no larger story for them to be a part of, just a narrative comprised of a low-trajectory character arc and many, many action scenes. And that's a shame, because the setup was there, clear as day. And that's my commentary on the John Wick script that could have been. I dare say should have been. Some final thoughts, because I doubt I'll make another John Wick video. It is worth reiterating that the moment-to-moment filmmaking is spectacular, outdoing itself in seemingly impossible ways, culminating in this weaving bird's-eye perspective magma shotgun firefight through a building that's straight out of Hotline Miami. I also love the world, even if it requires 100% suspension of disbelief at times when the carnage rages across the streets of the world. You'd think it would be difficult to retain secrecy when every second chump with a pocket knife is apparently a professional murderer. And last but not least, I love that Keanu has had this late bloom action renaissance. He works perfectly as John Wick. It's a character that suits his dramatic range, sorry Keanu, while at the same time showcasing his astonishing physical ability. That ain't no stuntman, baby, that's Keanu. I also couldn't help thinking about the meta element between him and the character, since Keanu's wife died in a car crash around the turn of the century. It lends a sweetness and undercurrent of reality to the wife stuff in the movie. And that's what I got. I think that's all of it. I'm sad that the story didn't cohere for me, but man, even so, these movies are awesome. And I'm sure I'll be rewatching them many, many times. Peace, love, and hand grenades, and I'll see you weirdos next time.